This is a meeting of the Special Education Advisory Committee of the Halton District School Board for Tuesday, November the 7th, 2023. In accordance with Ontario Regulation 463-97 and the guidelines effective February the 1st, 2021, HDSB promotes community engagement and participation by having processes in place for members of the public to ask questions. A Google form was attached to the agenda, distributed in advance of the meeting, and is also posted on the HDSB SEAC website. Questions posed during live stream meetings of SEAC may be answered during the meeting, particularly those related to agenda items, or at the following meeting at the discretion of the chair. For efficiency, multiple questions received that are similar in nature may be grouped together at the discretion of the chair and/or vice chair. Questions will not be attributed. Notation will be made that multiple people ask the same question. Any questions that contain language that is hateful or discriminatory will not be considered. So at this time, we will start with a roll call to record who is in attendance. Please answer yes or present. Autism Ontario, Jennifer Laguerre.
Present.
Amanda, my writing is a bit scribbly. Amanda from Autism Ontario. Amanda is Winch.
I'm texting with her and she says she's here, but she may be having technical difficulties.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. For the Association of Bright Children, we have Kate Lambacher.
Present.
And Surika Kanithi. No. Okay. For Community Living North Halton, Evelyn Bursey.
Present.
And Angel Zuzik.
Angel is the backup.
Okay,
She's
fine.
not using him. Yep.
Nadia Torek sent her regrets. For the Centre for Diverse Learners, Alison Brindle, I am present. Diane Vanden Bosch. No. For Voice, Kathy Turner. Or Erin Sproul. Okay. Easter Seals, Melissa Dockery. Or Kate Lansley. Sarah Lansley.
Present. Good evening.
Good evening. And Sophia Siddiqui sent her regrets for Halton Down syndrome. And I didn't write all my last names down, but Kaiser, are you here as member at large?
I am present. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Melissa Summer sent her regrets. And Katie, my co-chair, is not present at this time unless, Katie, you're somewhere online. Okay. In terms of our trustees, Naveed.
Good evening, everyone.
Great. And Carol Baxter.
Present.
Okay, thank you. And then finally for staff, we have Colette.
Good evening.
Conan.
Present. Good evening.
Good evening. And Marta.
Good evening.
Good evening. And I don't know if there are other trustees present. I would say that my glasses can't actually read that far. Any other trustees present that we need to record for the minutes? I think Robert sent his regrets. So, okay, thank you very much, everybody. Now we're going to begin by honouring the land. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Attawandaron, the Haudenosaunee and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honour and respect the four directions, land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us. So in a slight change from our normal procedure, prior to approving our agenda and minutes, from our last meeting, there were some questions about Robert's rules, particularly as it relates to the recording of the minutes. And I'm very grateful to some of the HDSB staff and trustees for providing me with some guidance. This is relatively new for me, and I've got the little book and I've got the page. So Gail Gortmaker, who completes the minutes for the board meetings, outlined that the minutes record the actions taken by the committee, the board, or the voting body, not the comments or objections by any one member of the group. In Robert's rules, it basically makes it clear that the minutes are there to record the actions that are taken, not the discussion that took place. So while we can have a fulsome discussion, that will not be noted in the minutes. It will not indicate where people agreed or disagreed, it's purely for outsiders looking in to see what actions did the group take, which is why all motions have to be moved and then seconded and then put to a vote. If a party at the table wishes to have some kind of motion made, that they can move to make a motion at the meeting. So if they want to make a motion to include a particular point of view, they can make a motion to do that. That would need to be seconded and then would need to be voted on. That would then go into the minutes. So anything that has not been approved by a resolution of the committee may nevertheless be submitted to the board by the trustees as a minority report. So if for some reason there's a group that disagrees with the discussion that took place and wishes to put forward their own minority report, that is possible. Does not require a vote in any way, but the member submitting the minority report must provide a copy of the report to the SEAC chair on or before the date of the report is submitted to the board. The board of trustees will then provide the author of the minority report with written acknowledgement of receipt, and then we'll append that to the special education plan. So those can be, my understanding is those can be submitted at any point during, it's not just related to the special education plan, but if there are issues that organizations feel very strongly about, that have not, they feel been addressed by SEAC, there is the option for them to produce a minority report that goes to the chair and then to the board chair for presentation at the board of trustees. So does anybody have any questions about that? And I'm not going to claim I'm an expert, but I do have a book that has some information. But basically, my understanding from this is that under our governance model, we are not recording the discussion. We're not recording who's in favour or who's not in favour. It is only motions that are passed by SEAC that make their way into the minutes, plus a note of things that have actually taken place. So if there's a presentation, there will be a note that that presentation was made and that perhaps there was a discussion, but there will not be note of what that discussion was on unless there's a motion that relates to that. So does anybody have any questions about that process? Yep, Kate.
More a statement that I suspect there are going to be a lot more motions then from people who feel the need to ensure that important information is making it on the record, because I don't think many of us were aware that that was a necessary part of the process. And for the people who are not here this evening, and we may need to repeat this at the next meeting, maybe we need a motion for that.
I can take it on board and put it into the agenda, but I think it is important. Again, I was not necessarily aware of all the intricacies of Robert's rules, so I'm learning too. But that is the process under which we run this committee, and which HDSB operates. So going forward, I do take your point that there may have to be motions if people want something to make its way up to the board. Then there will have to be a motion made, moved, seconded, and approved. If that still doesn't get the response that an organization might be looking for, they can then submit a minority report that could make its way directly to the board. Okay. That being said, if there are no other questions, we can then go back to the minutes, because there were some questions about whether there was enough detail in the last minutes. So the minutes that were taken in, so first of all, actually we'll approve the agenda. The agenda was sent out. Are there any modifications or amendments that need to be made to the agenda? If so, do you want to indicate that either in person or through the chat? Yes, Kate.
I would like to discuss the policies for when the working together information is passed to parents.
You would like to add that to this agenda?
Yes, I would like some, if it may need to get pushed, but if the information is available, but if it is, I would like to.
So when the working
understanding
together
of that.
document, at what part in the process? Yep. Okay. Is that something that can be added to the agenda, or you can comment on during it? Okay. So we will add that. Will that be in we could add that into the CX discussion and question period. Would that be okay? Does anything else want to get added? Okay, would anybody like to move the motion to approve the agenda with the addition or the opportunity for Kate to ask the question in the question period? Great, thank you, Carol. That's wonderful. Would anybody like to second the motion?
I'll do that.
Okay, and
I
that
second.
is Naveed. Okay. Does anybody have opposition to the agenda as it stands? If you oppose the agenda, could you please indicate now so it's an opposition to the agenda? Okay, none being seen, the agenda is approved unanimously. So first of all, we're going to go back to our September the 12th meeting minutes. Those were provided in the pre-reading, as well as the October the 3rd meeting minutes. With our new understanding of what needs to be included in the minutes, are there any errors or omissions that anybody would like to bring to our attention? No. Would anybody like to move a motion to approve the September the 12th minutes? Okay, Carol, thank you. Second them. So who is that? That's
Jennifer Laguerre.
Jennifer Laguerre.
Yep, that's me.
Okay, great. And does anybody have any opposition to the minutes as recorded? Please indicate. Okay, none being seen. The September the 12th minutes are approved unanimously. So finally is the approval of our October the 3rd, 2023 meeting minutes. Anybody want to bring to our attention any errors or omissions? Okay, would anybody like to move a motion to approve the minutes? Carol?
I'll approve them.
Okay, so who was that? Sorry.
Amanda.
Great, thank you, Amanda. And second?
I'll second it. It's Sarah Lansley.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Is there any opposition to the minutes as recorded? If so, could you please indicate now? Okay, none being seen, the October the 3rd minutes are approved unanimously. Okay, so thank you very much. We're now at our action items. And first of all, we're going to have a presentation by the blind, low vision staff team. So I would like to welcome them to provide us with a presentation on their importance.
Thank you, everyone.
Alrighty. Once at the beginning. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having us here tonight. We're going to begin our presentation with a quick introduction of our blind low vision team. I'm Alicia Carnegie, and I'm one of the blind low vision itinerant teachers, along with Sarah Barham, Daniel Felton, Lindsay Mann, Helen Murphy, and Nazanin Poirier. Our team also consists of 3 vision itinerant EAs, Simi Cambo, Nicole McRae, and Natalie Shaw. And we're lucky enough to have our own Brailleist, Mary Giabi.
Hello, I'm Sarah Barham, and I will be talking about blind and low vision students who are supported by the Halton District School Board. There are varying degrees and types of vision loss among the students in Halton. The majority of students, which is 83%, have low vision, where they have quite a bit of usable vision. 4.2% of students use Braille or are pre-Braille users, so they're learning Braille. 9.6% of students have cortical visual impairment, also known as CVI, where the connection between the eyes and the brain is impacted, which affects how a person can see. And with appropriate intervention, the brain can learn how to interpret the visual images. And then 2.4% of the students are deafblind. Depending on the severity and type of the visual impairment, the vision itinerant teacher for the Halton District School Board may provide direct or consultative support to the student and or the school staff. The vision itinerant teacher may make programming suggestions and support the staff with tasks such as IEP development, assistive technology instruction, and with getting appropriate instructional, environmental, and assessment strategies in place. Students who are Braille users receive the most direct support, which is usually 50% vision itinerant teacher and 50% vision EA. Students with low vision have a variety of different visual impairments and are primarily supported by our vision itinerant teachers on a monitor or consultation basis. Students with cortical visual impairment are supported by school-based educational assistants with consultative support from the vision itinerant teacher. And students who are deafblind have combined hearing and vision loss and are supported by the vision itinerant teacher.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. I'm Nazanin Poirier. And the way our support looks is quite different depending on the severity of the needs for our students. We support students throughout elementary and secondary. So we start right from junior kindergarten, JK, all the way up to high school. We support students in mainstream classrooms as well as alternate learning environments such as life skills classes or the community pathway programs in high school. We offer direct support, which would mostly be one-on-one, often in the classroom, but we also can withdraw students to an alternate working location so that we can work directly with them on expanded core curriculum skills such as assistive technology, learning Braille, pre-Braille skills, and other very important efficiency skills for them. And we also work on orientational mobility services. And if we can go to the next slide, that's with the help of our orientation and mobility specialist. And we're very lucky that we have an O&M specialist through Vision Loss Rehabilitation Ontario, who comes out, does assessments for our blind and low vision students. And depending on the severity of the needs, with this, students can get direct lessons, working on safe travel skills, on correct use of white cane skills, and orientation within the school and the community. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Daniel Felton. Thank you for having us tonight. I wanted to speak with you all about our Braille transcriber. We are very lucky to have a wonderful, uses the word incredible, and that's probably a better description for her. Her name's Mary, and she does a lovely job of transcribing and changing materials to make them more accessible for our students. But before I sort of get into the tangible pieces of what she does, I thought it's important, and I asked for permission from Mary to share that she actually has a son who has fully lost his vision, and at quite a young age he lost it. But the really neat part of where he's gone with his journey is he has continued on to tertiary education, and that's happened through all the support that he received at HDSB. So a pretty unique story, but the reason why I wanted to share that is because, you know, Mary produces a lot of these tangible items that you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, but her support, she provides so many more intangible things for us, and she's just such a valuable part of our team. So part of what she does produce for us are many of the Braille images that you see on the bottom left-hand side in that image. We can take a normal picture and we can make it and turn it into a tactile one. Calendars can be changed. Items like the 100 chart that we would use normally, which are very visually driven, can be changed into tactile resources. But she also does other things like, if you see on that top right-hand side, taking books and making them much more accessible from a vision point of view, but also adding Braille too. So there are many things that Mary does. She also creates these things called story boxes, which we're working towards creating a few more of, which are really helpful for providing some more real life experiences for our children on top of what you would normally get from the vision piece with books. And then also for our students with cortical visual impairment, there's many strategies that we use to make those things visually and the items we use in classrooms more visually accessible. And so Mary understands that process and can help us with providing those resources as well. I also wanted to speak with you about the building capacity piece. One of the other things outside of, you know, providing those services to our students, building capacity within our schools and our community is another role that we have as vision itinerant teachers. And that can look like what you see on the left-hand side, where during PD days, we have provided presentations, and within that we can build capacity in large amounts, and that's a great way for us to continue to strengthen the knowledge around our community. But also at the same time, when we visit schools, a large part of our role is building the capacity of the teachers and the support staff who work with the students that we don't see all the time as well. So that's a really integral part of the role that we have as vision itinerant teachers.
Another great opportunity our Braille students have is that with the help of their vision itinerant teacher, they prepare and present a Braille workshop to their classroom peers and their teacher. And it's really a highlight of their learning and to be able to share what they're learning and how they can read and Braille. And it really amazes their classmates. This is a picture of one of my previous Braille students, grade 5 student, teaching her peers how to Braille their name after they made a presentation and taught the Braille code to their classmates, and also to make some bookmarks that are tactile and also to have a phrase written. It really is quite a highlight, and their peers are quite amazed at how quickly the student can Braille, and they also realize how difficult the Braille code is and what an amazing talent the student has. So it's quite a great celebration. Thank you.
Nazanin, I'll take this one on. We sort of debated about who should take this because we both had the experiences with the goal ball workshops. But so you see in this photo here on the right-hand side, in the blue shirt is Bill Edwards. Bill Edwards comes from the Vision Resources Centre, or from W. Ross McDonald, and he actually takes classes. We put in these requests and he takes classes, and sometimes I've had entire year groups at certain schools go through a workshop with him to learn goal ball. So goal ball is a game in which it's been created for people with vision loss, and Bill has quite an interesting story into the history of how it was created. It actually came about after the Second World War and the need to try and increase people's engagement for those who had lost that vision during the wars. And then it created goal ball. It's not too dissimilar to soccer, but you are fully blindfolded and you are able to roll the ball and the ball makes a sound. And so Bill comes along and teaches the students in the classes. And it's a great way for kids to experience the world, because we actually do have the blindfolds for students to wear, and they get into it, and the engagement with the other students is quite significant, and it's lovely to see just how much that understanding of how much you use your vision from day to day for those other students, especially when you're playing a game like goal ball. So it's a fabulous way for us to provide our community of students that opportunity to say, here's a great game that you can go and play, but also to build an understanding within the other students that are in that classroom or that school with that student. So it's an excellent resource, and certainly one that we'll continue to use as the years go on.
Hi, everybody. I'm Helen Murphy, and I'm just going to share with you a little bit about something we do in Halton called blind hockey. So each year our team brings our students from across the board together for an event with the Canadian Blind Hockey Association to try blind hockey or skating for the first time. This day is an opportunity for our students and their families to come together and meet each other, but also learn about a sport that has been adapted to be inclusive for the blind community. It's something we all really look forward to. Our students look forward to it. They ask every year, when's blind hockey happening? And so we have our date of November 17th coming up, and I know it's pretty anticipated by the students. And we've had some great success stories of students actually joining the Blind Hockey League in Toronto and playing in their first blind hockey tournament. So it's just, it's a really fun day for all of our students. And then I was just going to discuss some of the other programs and events that we encourage or participate in with our team. So our school board also works alongside W. Ross McDonald School for the Blind. That's the provincial school for the blind, to share opportunities to our students that are available outside of the school hours. So these include something called short-term programs that are unique programs that are geared towards the needs of students with visual impairments. And they're to experience different sort of general interest things, like they have a music camp or a cooking camp, and it's a great opportunity for our students to go stay at W. Ross and learn about cooking and be around other students who are visually impaired, just to have that experience. And we also, of course, participate in the Halton District School Board Special Athletes Track Meet every year, and our amazing Braille transcriber has facilitated making ribbons that are inclusive and bracelets containing Braille for our students to receive when they complete their events. So as you guys may know, it's an annual event event in the HDSB that provides athletes with special needs, including our BLW students, an opportunity to demonstrate their skills and celebrate their successes with fellow students, family and friends.
Awesome. Well, that concludes our presentation. But before we go, we just want to leave you with a little quote from Helen Keller. Alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much. And I'm not sure if we're allowed to ask if there are any questions, but we wanted to say thank you again for having us. And if there are any questions and we can answer, we would be happy to answer them now.
Great. Well, thank you. That was a lovely presentation. And it's great to see some of the amazing opportunities that you have for our students. Does anybody have any questions? Carol.
So not a question, but just a really quick comment and a thank you to all of you for the work that you do. I'm feeling very privileged that you're here at the HDSB and that our students benefit from the work that you do. So thank you.
Great. Any other questions? I have a question because while other people are thinking, just a quick question. How many students do we actually have in HDSB who are in your programming? And yeah, that as a starting question. How many children are you supporting?
Well, I know Helen was doing the percentages. I don't know if you finalized the numbers. On average, we carry each a low vision caseload, including students with CVI, of around 35 to 40 is sort of our caseload. And we each have at least one or maybe 2 Braille students. So it's a bit of a juggling act. So, but that's, sorry, we could have had the numbers exact. We sort of went with percentages for relative comparison.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. So we're talking about 120 or so students, something like that, between the
hovering around 120, 140.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah,
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Ryan. Oh no, that's Ryan's joining.
Ryan is our wonderful blind low vision IPL. Hi, Ryan.
So do we have any more questions at this time? Great. Well, thank you so much for coming to present to us. It's wonderful to see the work that you're doing, and I can only imagine how challenging it is to learn to read Braille. Whenever I go into the accessibilities and I put my fingers over the thing at the doors, I'm just amazed at what additional effort it must take to learn that. And so the fact that we're able to teach the kids and also to recognize their strength and growth in learning that new language that none of us know. So I just congratulate them as well as you. And thank you very much for coming. Okay, at this point, we are going to have another presentation. Looking forward to this one. And again, I would like to thank ABC and Kate for sending this in advance. That was really helpful. And I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And I ask your patience because I am not a Google Meet user, so I may be a little awkward with the technology. So first, a little bit about ABC. ABC Ontario is an all-volunteer group that works to provide resources to parents and educators supporting bright and gifted children and youth. Things like IEP recommendations, learning about gifted needs, assistance in doing various kinds of advocacy. And local chapters may also run events, speakers, social get-togethers for families in order to support their local families. And ABC Halton at this point mainly does most of their support and conversations through a Facebook group. which is available at, if you join the ABC Halton organization page, you can get connected to the ABC Parents Chat, which is a place for parents to connect with one another and discuss in a private group the needs of their families. And now on to the more meaty part of our program. I think I have to do a switch here. And I don't know how to do it. Sorry. Here we go. Okay. So thank you to those who did manage to take the time to look over this material ahead of time. I know that it's more material than I can cover today. So what I'll be focusing on today is a little bit of discussion jumping off of the material in the presentation. And if you did not get a chance to read all of the meat in it, I hope that you will do so later. So fundamentally, our position is that every child has a right to a learning environment that supports the growth of their academic, social, emotional, and behavioral skills. And gifted children who do not receive early support for their developmental needs may fail to develop social and learning skills necessary to their future success. So what is intellectual giftedness? On a basic level, it's much higher than average intellectual ability. Intellectually gifted people tend to process information and input from their environment more deeply than most. They may demonstrate creative and abstract thinking, unusual ways of synthesizing new information, solving problems. They might be particularly good at one particular aspect of music, art, science, language, and so on. They may be very curious. They may have a strong sense of justice, which is what my mother always accused me of when I was a child, an overdeveloped sense of justice, and an intense need for understanding the information. What giftedness is not the same as high achieving. So gifted children are not necessarily the highest performing children in a classroom. Some of them may struggle intensely in the classroom, may have poor marks. It does not mean that they excel. It does not mean that learning is easy for them. And in fact, gifted children with poor learning skills or who have not confronted, who have not had an opportunity to confront problems that they didn't need to solve and working through them may actually be worse than a typical child at coping with not knowing how to do something or failing. They just simply haven't built those skills up. And when they eventually reach a point where they do not know how to do something easily, it absolutely overwhelms them. They have no skills to integrate information that they don't easily understand. They don't know how to study. They don't know how to cope with not knowing easily. And so we feel strongly that it is critical that young gifted children are challenged as early as possible in their educational career so they get that experience of needing to work at learning and knowing. As I said earlier, giftedness doesn't imply any specific proficiency or talent. Interestingly, in our parent discussions, we have people asking, does my child have to be good at math to be involved in this program? My child is very bright, but they're absolutely terrible at math. No, it has nothing to do with being good at any one specific skill or ability. And this is a big one for me. It does not mean that gifted children are not born to be leaders. They're not born, they don't have an obligation to teach others. They don't have an obligation to do something profound or to live up to anybody's expectations of what their potential might be. That perspective that some people have about the gifted is harmful not just to children but adults, and really impacts gifted individuals throughout their lives. how do we measure intellectual giftedness? So basically, there are a series, it's usually done through an IQ test, or in the case of our board, the WISC, do you use 4 or 5 now? 4, I think. That was what it was when my children were screened, WISC 4, or potentially 5 if they're getting an outside assessment, which is a test of verbal comprehension, visual spatial skills, fluid reasoning, working memory, and processing speed. Not all of those tests are used to come up with a result that forms the full scale IQ that would be used to judge intellectual giftedness. And in fact, there's a measure called the General Ability Index, which specifically excludes working memory and processing speed, because those two especially tend to be hampered in twice exceptional students, but is not a sign, and therefore is not necessarily a sign of their potential for being intellectually gifted. So that by using the General Ability Index, we sort of get a more holistic view of their intellectual capacity outside of their ability to think quickly, have good short-term or long-term memory, and so on. So across Ontario, there is actually a surprising variety in what constitutes the cutoff for formal identification of giftedness. In our board, it is the 98th percentile, considered the very superior range, and that, unless this has changed from when my children were identified, that may be in the full-scale IQ, the General Ability Index, or 2 different subtests of the evaluation. So, for instance, verbal comprehension and visual spatial. What is wrong with the word gifted? A lot of people absolutely hate the label gifted and find it gets their back up for a number of reasons. One, there's significant prejudice and stereotyping and judgment around that label, and also expectation of what people should do or should be able to perform or should be able to give to others. And many parents are afraid of labeling their child as gifted because of all the baggage that they perceive comes with the label. And unfortunately, many gifted parents find that they cannot share anything about their child's development with anyone, not with even friends and family, because they will be criticized both for remarking on things that their kids can do well or trying to explain the challenges that their children have. They're judged either way, and so they just don't share. It's a very isolating experience to be the parent of a gifted child if you're in a discussion and everyone is talking about what their children are reading or when they started walking, and you have to sit back and not say a thing. It's an incredibly isolating experience, and connecting with other parents of gifted children is one of the few venues that most of these parents have to speak openly about what it is like to parent their child. The word gifted is also a terrible description of what giftedness actually is. It is an intense and deep way in which the individual processes information. It isn't a magical ability or talent that they have, and so the word gift doesn't in any way seem to be connected to the description of what intellectual giftedness actually means. And of course, many, both adults and children who are intellectually gifted have faced significant challenges in their life that they directly tie to their intellectual giftedness, and positively resent the word gifted and the idea that it is a gift or advantage to them. My own child has told me many times, why can't I just be normal? People don't want it necessarily. They don't feel that it is a gift that they have been given. At the same time, many or most of us, and I am in this community as well, it is a defining part of our existence. It impacts literally every part of our lives, our parenting, our work life, our friendships, our learning. Every single moment of our lives is impacted by this intrinsic part of who we are. So we do feel an identity with intellectual giftedness. We just may hate the label gifted. So there are other ways people may choose to identify, having an intellectual difference, being neurodiverse, being twice exceptional. And it's important to respect that some people do not like having a conversation that involves the word gifted. I'm going to try and move quickly through this intense information about overexcitabilities because there is a lot. The idea of overexcitabilities, there's actually quite a bit of literature and follow-up studies on this concept, which is an idea that people can very much more intensely process input and in a way that affects their level of responsiveness. So they may have seeking behaviors, they may have avoidant behaviors, and they just may react to inputs in ways that are extremely atypical. So young children do not have coping skills, so overexcitabilities impact young children much more than adults, but adults still have overexcitabilities. I have the range that we see on the next page. Even as an adult, those are things that affect me on a daily basis, every single one of them. But I, as an adult, have coping skills that children do not have. And a typical classroom environment, directed learning, meaning told what to do when and what is appropriate at a given time, behavioral expectations of how you should sit, how you should, when you should be still, when you should move, the sights and smells of a classroom, even someone eating lunch next to you at the desk next to you may be completely overwhelming to children who have these overexcitabilities. So there are five, in this theory, there are five types of overexcitabilities that are explored. Follow-on studies have shown that particularly intellectual, emotional, and imaginative overexcitabilities are tied to the gifted population, although all of them may apply. But they particularly found a very strong correlation of those three with the gifted population. The idea of an intellectual overexcitability is not being able to let go of your thinking, having to go deeper, having to follow every path that leads on to the information that you're given. This can be really disruptive in a classroom where a child wants to ask the next question, something off topic, something tangential to what's going on, and they're unable to move on to the next thing, let it go as they may be told to do, or you don't need to do that much, it's good enough. That can be absolutely devastating to a gifted child who doesn't want to be told that their work is good enough or that they should move on. Psychomotor, needing to do all the time, never being able to relax or not be busy, always having to have stimulation, and becoming emotionally distressed when they do not have that stimulation. So an intensity of boredom that is not typical. So boredom to the point that it is causing acute emotional distress for the child. Emotional, feeling incredibly deeply. So incredible highs and lows and reactions that are out of scale to the stimulus or how normal people might react to something, or incredibly intense responses to stories or situations in their lives that they perceive to be unfair or causing distress. My daughter just this week got permission to read a different novel because she was in such distress at what she perceived as consent issues in a book in class, and it was so distressing to her that she had to cease reading the book and be assigned another novel because she felt so deeply. No one could understand, no one else in the class had any issue, but it was such a deep connection with the idea that the situation was injustice that she could not proceed with the book. Sensory, I think hopefully people at this table all may have experience with sensory oversensibilities or overexcitabilities, overwhelmed with their environment, smell, touch, taste, sound. Imaginative, where they're completely drawn through their brain's desire to experience the world, think about how it's organized, look at the colors, the shapes, the interactions in the world around them, and they just absolutely cannot kind of reset their mind from being drawn into their creativeness, their fictional ideas, their fantastical thinking. Giftedness is a spectrum. It's everything from a child who does academically very well and is very happy in the classroom to a child who finds the classroom traumatizing and comes home every day having complete restraint collapse after school every single day and is unable to cope in the classroom environment. Some children have medical learning, developmental needs, other things that impact how they learn and what they need out of the school experience. They may have overexcitabilities. And of course, there's a wide range of intellectual difference. The intellectual difference between a moderately gifted child, that would be someone at the bottom of the very superior range, and a profoundly gifted child at the 99.9th percentile, is as much of an intellectual difference as the moderately gifted child and a typical child. So there is an incredible range of need there. Gifted children do develop asynchronously, and a number of these I'm not going to go in because I have so much to talk about today, but in many ways children are at various levels on any of these scales. So they may act many years below their age level in some ways, and many years above their age level in others. I had permission from my child to give an example of at age 12, she was reading an adult level feminist retelling of St. George and the Dragon, which was her favorite book, and trying to find people to play pretend with her at recess in the same child. So the differences can be extreme. And of course, the response that they get from both their peers and adults to their asynchrony has a humongous impact on their feeling of self-worth. So I hope that some of you at least some of the gifted population, may have recognized some of these specific ways that their children behave in understanding how those things that are common to gifted children impact how they work with their peers. So if their peers don't understand the words they're using, don't like having complex plans and rules for every single activity, debate about what is fair or true because a child tells a little white lie and the gifted child is beside themselves for an hour about it. All of these things can cause significant trouble in making connections with their peers. It's very common for gifted children to seek out significantly younger or older children to interact with, or even to become attached to adults and choose to try and spend recess talking to a teacher instead of their peers. So they do not necessarily do best socially or academically with their same age peers. And in fact, many of them do not make durable, meaning lasting social connections with other children until they meet gifted children who have similar development profiles. Similarly, adults who do not understand gifted children frequently have expectations that are unreasonable for children. These children recognize their intellectual giftedness and expect their social, emotional, behavior development to be at that level, which it is not, or they see childish behaviors and don't understand the intellectual needs of the child. And in particular, the responses that gifted children get from adults to their asynchrony can cause incredible feelings of inadequacy in these children and a lot of self-doubt and difficulties with self-concept. So what is a developmental peer? The terms like true peer, like-minded peer, developmental peer appear over and over and over again in discussions of giftedness because it's important to understand that a same-age peer does not represent a good same-stage peer for gifted children, and they do not interact necessarily with their typical same-age peers, and they do not get out of those relationships the same thing that typically developing children do. And all children, literally all children, benefit in many important ways from connecting with developmental peers. Cooperation, empathy, problem solving, these are all critical life skills that children get from interacting with developmental peers. For gifted children, intellectual peers have some specific advantages, and that is the ability to become engaged in group work, which is a humongous part of the modern education system. Group work, compared to when I was young, is a huge part of the classroom of today. But they may not be engaged in those groups if they do not have an intellectual peer. This is a hard one for me. The idea that you can learn to take the input of others, respect it, and change your mind, that ability is critical in everyone's long-term life. And having access to intellectual peers allows children to develop that skill of realizing that you can have a shared understanding with someone else. You can take their input into your concept of how something works or what is right. And again, because of their unique developmental profile, it's very frequent that gifted children have a much higher chance of finding those developmental peers with other gifted children. There's a little fake story about Mary there that hopefully some of you will get a chance to read. Twice exceptionality, I think we've discussed this in other meetings, the idea that giftedness can easily co-occur with many other conditions. These conditions do not preclude intellectual giftedness. Unfortunately, in many cases, one can mask the other, or classroom behavior, social issues, academic issues can be misattributed between the two. Why does identification matter? One is a connection to community and identity, which matters for these individuals. They may not already know that they're different, but having that identification tells them how and why, and gives them a connection to resources and community. And of course, for twice exceptional individuals, having that formal identification helps to frame their needs in the classroom and in life, so they can understand, so they can hopefully have a full picture of their needs. So a little bit about the timing of identification, which obviously plays into some of the discussion I've had at other points in these SEAC meetings. There is no perfect age for identification for a number of reasons. Because of asynchronous development, not all gifted children will display traits of giftedness at the same time. And so there isn't one age that you will find a research study says, 7 is the perfect age to identify gifted children. It doesn't work that way because these children are not all developing at the same pace, and they're not all going to display the traits of giftedness at the same time. Very early identification studies, and I got the studies from the HGSB survey of the gifted program, indicate that there generally, and that early identification does represent a true need for enrichment at the time, but very early age identification may be unstable. Again, because of asynchronous development, it may be a less accurate identification that isn't stable over time. At the same time, there are young children who are both immediately and long-term in need of enrichment and support, and failing to account for that, for those children who need that very early identification, means that they miss out on that early support that they need. At the same time, late identification is problematic for quite a big portion of gifted individuals, because they start to develop masking behaviors, anxiety, perfectionism, sensory challenges, focus, other things that make late identification very problematic, especially because late identification often involves group testing. And a lot of these individuals, for all of the reasons listed, perform very poorly in group testing. So I was fortunate to be given the 2019 report that HDSB did of the gifted programming. And the consensus of that literature indicates that a window of between 6 and 9 years of age is the appropriate time for identification for most children. That teacher nominations are considered strong assessment tools, but only if those teachers are trained on recognizing gifted characteristics, formal quantitative metrics, and not, because otherwise teachers may think about their academically successful children and not their children who are showing other traits of giftedness. And of course, group screenings are less effective for some of the most vulnerable children. So poor reading skills, poor English proficiency, difficulty with focused attention, sensitivity to environmental factors, all of those children are generally not identified well in group screenings. And depending on what the cutoff is, the recommendation is that a secondary set of group screenings be used to make sure to catch all of the individuals who would be identified. And unfortunately, the report, what the report identifies as the source of equitable identification is not what I believe we are doing today in HDSB, which is a universal screening of young children that combines teacher and parent referral methods with nonverbal ability testing. That type of testing catches significantly more minority students, students of low socioeconomic status, females, and English language learners. I know I'm way over time, so I would encourage you to read about some of the specific needs that gifted children have in the classroom. I'm going to highlight two, and that is the intellectual challenges that we discussed earlier and their importance in preventing children from becoming maladapted in later parts of their academic career, and the idea of supportive space for academic risks. So clustering gifted children together makes them feel less singled out and studies show makes them more likely to take academic risks, meaning they're more likely to participate, to show their ability to take a chance that when they don't know if they're right. Everything on this slide has happened to me or my children or gifted children I know. We have a lot of in-class research support for primary children, expecting these children to come up with self-directed enrichment. Grade 1, 2, and 3 students are babies. They're little children who do not have the capacity to develop their own enrichment programs. It's important to remember that gifted children are still children and they deserve to be treated like young children, and young children cannot develop intellectually stimulating enrichment plans for themselves. It is unfair to have, for the second one, it's unfair to have children being told to waste classroom time. Play on your phone was a new one. My high schooler got that one. But do whatever you want is a common one that gifted children are got. They understand the material. They've already done the exercises. Do whatever you want. That is an unfair use of a student's time. No children should ever be wasting classroom time because they already understand the material. No child should ever be told not to learn by their teacher. Again, my children were told, don't let her do math at home. Stop letting her read middle school books. This was kindergarten. No child should ever be told by their teacher to stop learning. That is absolutely inappropriate. It absolutely happens in classrooms in our board, and it's unacceptable. Children do have intense feelings of low self-worth when they detect the frustration of their teachers due to their behavior, due to their boredom, due to their acting out. And of course, they should not be forced to repeat and excessively review material that they already know. A child who understands how to multiply and divide should not be doing counting books 1 to 12. As an adult, if someone made me do a counting book every day, I would lose my mind. It is just as unfair to do that to children who do not have coping skills. Little things in the classroom build up distrust. So tiny things that on their own seem minor or maybe good intentioned can have incredibly long-term effects of eating away at children's trust in their classroom teacher and in the classroom environment, like being asked to spend all of their time teaching other students instead of learning new material. The exemplar one is being asked to give up things that they've created and love because the teacher also really loves it and wants to show it to next year's student. It's a minor thing, but those little things eat away at classroom trust. What is gifted grouping and why does it matter? So I think we've already covered this in the other slides that I've said, that we know that these students benefit socially and academically from being with their developmental peers. There are a number of environments in HGSB where we do give children that opportunity, and we know from the gifted program review that at least for 5 to 8, 60% of students were being placed in a self-contained program. And now we're on to the meat of our concerns, none of which is new to this group because I have brought everything on this slide up to this group before. We believe that gifted students need access to timely identification, groupings of like-minded peers, and teachers that have been trained in the needs of gifted students. The gifted program review in 2019 indicated significantly greater parent satisfaction with support services in self-contained programs and clustered programs versus resource support in their home classroom. And there is again, significant measurable difference in parent reports of the improvement of academic and social skills for the children in self-contained placements versus resource support in the regular classroom. Changes that have been made to the identification process for very young children have we believe, created a geographic and economic inequity in our board. And the access to both identification and programming has in many ways become an economic privilege. We have parents who have not been able to access identification are being told to get private evaluations that they cannot afford. We should not be in a situation where access to support and programming is contingent on whether or not the parents have the economic privilege to seek out identification. And the fact that we do have dwindling early identification and we do have a policy that it quite strongly pressures parents to stay in the home classroom means that we've created unsustainable programs. And the result of that is unequitable access, both economically and geographically, to this programming. And finally, as the gifted program review indicated, and as the parent community is aware as participants in the programming, the identification of female students is significantly under what we would see if we had an equitable identification process. Studies show that if gender biases are removed from identification processes, we should be seeing near equal gender distribution and identification, and we have twice as many male students being identified. This shows a clear bias in the processes that are being used today to identify gifted students. Of course, I've given you tons and tons of references, and I apologize both for the length and the speed with which I had to rush through this. I will open it to any questions or comments.
Well, thank you very much, Kate. That's a very in-depth and interesting and insightful presentation. So thank you very much for doing that. Does anybody have any questions? There is one, Amanda.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that I can hear your passion, and you can just see that this means a lot to you, and it definitely came through in your presentation. I think you did an excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this point? Carol.
I just wanted to go back. Sorry, now I don't know which slide it is, and that's not helping you. It was the one where you were reviewing the report. There it is. Sorry, the HDSB report. So was there something in there that talked about early identification as the preference in this board? Or was that research that this board relies on to determine when to do screening?
Yeah, so it would be great if for those on the committee who don't have access to this gifted review, maybe we could make it available to those who would like to review it. The report was very careful to draw absolutely no conclusions about anything. It was a survey, meaning it presented a combination of surveying parents and the status of the programming in HDSB, as well as bringing together a significant number of research studies about identification. The majority of the research studies that were presented had an ideal range between 6 and 9, and there were these sort of 3 pieces of identification that were discussed. So the teacher nominations and the fact that they can have bias, and especially when there are not formal metrics, and that it misses teacher nominations by themselves, miss a significant number of gifted children. And there was the information. So this is right out of the report, but this is really all it said. So there were no conclusions drawn. The report was very much what is the state of both the HDSB programming, the programming and across the province, and what the bulk of literature had to say about various aspects of the programming, with absolutely no opinion whatsoever.
Sorry. Thank you, but we'll just have to take from the members. I think it was Jennifer. Is that right?
It is. Thank you. I was just wondering, in light of all of this, and being that I'm new, so I'm still learning how SEAC is working, how was the decision made by the board to start doing this testing in grade 4 if what we're seeing is maybe large group testing in grade 4 is not going to be the best or most effective means of capturing and identifying these exceptional learners? Like, how much money is the board spending on a test that maybe we're questioning the effectiveness of?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that question. I'm not sure that we're questioning the effectiveness of the universal screening tool, and that is a recommendation in the most recent Right to Read report from the Ontario Human Rights Commission that all boards conduct a universal screening of students. And that practice has been in place for many, many years. I've been with the board for 30 years, and as long as I can remember, that has been in place, and I would suggest that it's in place across the province in all boards, if not most boards, if not all boards. I think what's being, kind of queried is the assessment process on who gets assessed outside of that universal screening process in grade 4. And so that would be, the nominations that occur through the problem-solving pathway in the earlier grades, in the primary grades. So it's not a question of, having just started to implement it as a result of the 2019 report. It's been a practice that's been long in place and has continued to be recommended.
Kate?
So I think it's also important to note that the CCAT, I don't know if that's the way people say it, the CCAT is useful for more than just gifted identification. And we absolutely are not saying that the CCAT is not a useful screening tool. It is important for all types of exceptionalities and identification of not just giftedness, but other challenges in the classroom. And so this isn't in any way intended to indicate that that group testing is not important. It absolutely is. What has changed is the way that teacher nominations are occurring. When my children and I'm an older parent in the board, so my children were identified in SK, and at the time there was a point in the year in SK where those teachers would identify students in the classroom, and they would go through a formal step of identifying specific children in the classroom who may need further evaluation. That is the main thing that has changed in how the identification process occurs or used to occur and how it occurs now, today. And one of the significant challenges is that not all teachers have it there's two parts. One, without a formal moment at which that thought process needs to occur, where a teacher thinks about all of the children in their class and whether they should be screened, which is part of what point 3 there in more detail in the report discusses, is that formal moment of the teacher considering every child in the class using specific quantitative metrics to do that teacher nomination process, and along with training on gifted characteristics. That is what is missing from the processes of today. And instead, we have no clear moment when any teacher thinks about their entire class using quantitative metrics and training on what gifted characteristics are in order to do a more thorough and equitable job of identifying these children through teacher nomination processes. So I hope that clarifies.
Jennifer.
Absolutely. And my intent in the question was not to question whether or not we should be doing the gifted screening, but are we then doing enough to be identifying any kid with any neurodivergence early enough to be able to get them that early intervention we need? Is there a moment in time for kindergarten, grade 1 teachers to sit down with someone from the board to say, hey, let's look at my 18 students, my 27 students on the list, and we really need to talk about strengths and needs in each of these kids, and maybe we need to give more autonomy to these early years teachers to be able to do that?
Yeah, thanks for that, Jennifer. So absolutely, that's called literacy and numeracy monitoring that the principal engages with every teacher in the primary division. That happens at specific intervals throughout the year so that progress can be monitored, strategies can be discussed, and then that response to intervention is tracked. So that is one way that it's done, through the monitoring expectations. The other way is through the problem-solving pathway. So when a teacher or a parent identifies that there is a challenge in the student's learning and experiences, they come to school team or school resource team to talk about those challenges, again, discuss what strategies might be tried. That teacher then goes back, tries those strategies, brings additional information back, whether it's assessment data, anecdotal data, provides that feedback to the multidisciplinary team, gathers more strategies. So it's an iterative process of consulting with the school resource team, as well as the monitoring strategy that's hosted by the principal.
Are there any other questions at this time? Carol.
If I could just have one more. So I think the report that you're referring to is one component of the spec ed review that was done. Okay, so that was a much bigger review before my time. So I'm catching up and trying to read, what happened. There were multiple reports. So the purpose of the review that was started in 2017 was to identify actionable decisions about improvements and efficiencies in the delivery of special education programs and services. And I think in our last meeting, it was alluded to, that resources are finite and that resources were being directed in, one group of students with exceptionalities to the detriment of another. I'm not sure that I saw anything in the reports that I was able to find, but I might be missing something that supports that idea or that theory. But there was a reference to a supplemental report around the financial side of things, and I'm just wondering if that's available. It was a costing data report that was done as I think step 5 or something of the process.
I'm aware of the 3 stages and the 3 reports, and those are all available online on the board's website. I'm not sure which piece you're referring to, but maybe you can send me some details over email and I can take a look.
Yeah, that's perfect. So I guess my following question, if you had known which report I was talking about, was to ask if there's a current one that sort of follows up. So I guess that's the second part of my question is, aside from the costing piece, there was this report done in 2018. Has there been any further surveys of parents or any follow-on report to see how the impacts of some of these changes that were implemented have landed?
Are you asking specifically around families in self-contained programs? Because the different stages of the reports address different programs.
So it sounds like I'm gathering that as a result of this larger review of special education, there were many changes. I think that was alluded to in our last meeting, that there were some changes put in place that increased accessibility to testing for certain students or exceptionalities. And it sounds like some changes were made also to remove some of the processes that were in place. So given that those reports were based on surveys of students and parents and focus groups and that kind of thing, I'm just wondering if there's any plans to do another sort of set of surveys and interviews with parents, maybe across the board, to find out sort of how this is all landed and what impact the changes have had.
Yeah, that's certainly something we can take back and discuss with the research department. Certainly undertaking another special education review would be very costly while we're still working through all of the recommendations and the one from 2018, but we can certainly discuss that piece with research.
Thank you, Kate. As I said, I can hear your passion as a gifted parent or a parent of a twice exceptional student myself. I could see a lot of my children in your presentation, so thank you for sharing that with us. However, with time moving on, we are now at the SEAC discussion and question period. And then, Kate, you had a question about the Working Together Guide.
Yes. So to give context, we've had quite a lot of reports from parents who did not receive information on working together booklet problem-solving pathways until a significant amount of time into their contact with the school about classroom challenges. And by significant amount of time, I mean years. And although the material is available on the website, people don't look for information they don't know exists. And so my desire is to understand, is there a formal obligation moment for the school and the classroom teachers that when they have to provide parents with a struggling child with this information, because they may not know that this information exists and it's preventing them from following procedures and doing advocacy for their children?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Kate. So it does live in the special education plan. I'm looking at page 11. where it talks about means of communication, and the Working Together booklet is to be provided to a family two occasions, one being upon registration if it's articulated that the student has special education needs at the point of registration, or just prior to the first school resource team meeting. So those are the two intervals where we're obligated to provide it. But as you say, it is on our board's website and available for anyone to access at any time.
So, and I think we'll have to touch on this next time we do the special education plan review, but if these parents don't understand the pathways, it may take them an incredibly long time to get from a classroom problem to an SRT, because they won't even know that the SRT is part of the process if they haven't been given the booklet. This is very chicken and egg. They can't request an SRT if they don't know about it because they weren't given the information. So it would be incredibly beneficial to parents with children struggling in the classroom if there was a period of time of consistent classroom challenge wherein the teacher provides the parent with that information. They won't know to look, and they can go an incredibly long time of back and forth with a teacher trying to work through a problem without ever understanding what the pathways are, what the resources are that are available, and what their rights are as a parent and for the child in that classroom. That's all I have to say about that.
Sorry, I'd just like to back that up. I have never attended an SRT meeting with a parent or my own, and been provided with the Working Together document. I also, many of our clients that we serve, and we served 2,000 families last year, supporting them through navigating the special education system, had been told by their school about the IPRC process, had absolutely no understanding of what an exceptionality and what that process meant. So I really do agree that there needs to be a formal point at which staff must hand over the documentation, because, as Kate says, if you don't know that there's something you're supposed to be looking for, then you're never going to look for it. So whether it's a one-page document, which is the special education process, whatever it looks like, something really simple. We run workshops on this all the time, and we have parents who are like, I've had an IEP for years and I didn't know any of this. So I just think, in particular, as we've got newcomer families, we've got low marginalized families who don't have the time or the money to go and research it. We're doing them a disservice by not providing them with the information.
Yeah, thanks for that. We can take that back and look at some language in the special education plan, but also some messaging expectations to our administrators. Because I do want to be clear, right, it's not the teacher that's responsible for handing it over, so I don't want to place this on the classroom teacher. It is the responsibility of an administrator.
Are there any other questions for Colette at this time? If not, we will move on to the superintendent's report.
Just two brief items. So the CCAT that Kate was referring to, that process is now complete, and families will be receiving their results in late November, and they'll also be informed whether their child meets criteria for gifted or to continue on for a second stage of assessment in the identification process. And the other piece is our CPP information evenings. So the Community Pathways program is a self-contained program for our secondary students with developmental delays or mild intellectual disabilities. And One was last night, and the other one is tonight. So it's an exciting time for our students transitioning to high school.
Great. Thank you very much. Are there any questions regarding that report? No? Okay, so any association reports? Any associations like to make us aware of any information? Okay, Jennifer.
Thank you. I have 3 updates from Autism Ontario with some webinars and meetings that are available. The first is a webinar mini-series on mental health matters, and that's beginning November 16th to the 30th, and it has 3 different age groups. So for young children, school-age children, and for teens. As usual, I've provided Marta with all of the information and the links for more information to sign up for that one. There's another coming up at the end of November, which is a moderated webinar for autism, sexuality, and the law, presented by Dr. Isabel Hénon, and that is taking a look at illegal and inappropriate behavior. It's got case studies, and it also is taking a look at the idea of consent. And finally, the very last one is a Home for the Holidays workshop near the end of December, December 20th. And again, all of these are online. And this is a winter-themed workshop to take a look with skill building. And it's geared for families. So it's taking a look at 5 skill areas: fine motor skills, gross motor skills, sensory, mindfulness, and some social economic skills. So those are all available from Autism Ontario.
Great, sounds wonderful. Anybody, any other associations? I will then just briefly update what's going on over at the Centre for Diverse Learners. Obviously, autism and ourselves, recognizing it as a difficult time of year. We're also running a teen mental health workshop that is taking place in the middle of this month. We're also going to be running a workshop for Black parents who on understanding diagnoses related to neurodiversity and the IEP process and helping with that for that unique group. We have our conferences now live. So in March 1st, I think it is, we have our Educators Conference, a day and a half. We have some wonderful keynote speakers. This year we also have an intersectionality stream, which will be looking at the one of the speakers looking at the underdiagnosis of ADHD and autism in girls, looking at ADHD in the BIPOC community, and also looking at the intersectionality of mental health and neurodiversity. So some of those are taking place. And then finally, I would like to invite some of our other members, such as ABC. The Diverse Learners Ontario is putting together a research project in association with Sheridan to look at the inequitable impact of the high cost of diagnoses for some of our exceptionalities that cannot be diagnosed by a physician and require a psychologist. And so we're at the stage where we're doing some investigation and research work, scoping, but I'd like to reach out to any of our partners who want to be involved in that and have their voice heard as we take this forward at a provincial level to try and generate some systemic change. Okay, that being said, anybody else? And then we'll move on to the trustees' report. Carol?
So I will invite Trustee Ahmed to chime in if there's anything that I've forgotten, but I don't think there's anything specific that we were wanting to share today. But if I could just sort of bleed into 4.4, which is the committee reports, in my role as a trustee, not as a member of SEAC, I sit on the accessibility committee. We recently had an in-person meeting, and I think we talked about this last meeting, that the committee is trying this year to do as many in-person meetings as possible that can be combined with site visits to sort of show some of the work that's being done in the board. And I just wanted to take a minute to comment on some of the incredible work that's being done across departments. And I'm always just amazed at the cooperation. So between the special education staff, who then work with the facility staff to prepare schools as much as possible for students who are coming in. And it's really incredible to see some of the modifications and the consultation that goes on and the focus on student voice that we heard about at our last site visit, where they had a student who was coming in and had some needs, like physical adjustments that needed to be made to the school. And they met with both the student and their parent and really took the input from the student into consideration when planning, and commented that there were things they hadn't thought of and things that they'd thought of that were not needed. And they had a student who was very collaborative and open in sharing that. So I just, wanted to highlight that. I think as a trustee, I sort of have access sometimes to see how departments work together and how, the incredible staff that we have can make things happen in a really amazing way. And, in the newer schools, when they're being constructed, there's a lot of considerations that go into, being accessible. But we have a lot of older schools, as I'm sure everyone knows, in our board, and sometimes some creative modifications need to be made. And I think it's just amazing, some of the work that's done. And like I said, I really wanted to highlight it's very student focused and student led in many cases. And I think staff are to be commended for that and recognized. So thank you.
Great, that sounds wonderful. Was there anything you wanted to add? May have lost him. Okay. With that, then we'll move into the committee reports. We'll go through this list of standing committees. Evelyn Bursey, the Accessibility and Coordinating Committee. Obviously, we've had a comment there, but Evelyn, is there anything you would like to add?
Not at this time. Unfortunately, I had to send my regrets to the October meeting, so I will be attending the next one and I can share any updates.
Great, thank you. Mental Health and Wellbeing Strategy Steering and Advisory Committee. Kate.
Yes, we had our first meeting. The focus of the group and the focus of this particular meeting was the Student Mental Health and Wellbeing Plan, which is very student-driven and very collaborative. It was a very interesting meeting. I personally felt the plan was quite thorough, and the it's a very student-informed committee, and they're encouraged to participate and build the plan over time and use it as an input for, again, student-driven activities and, meeting their own needs, I guess, in the class. And I think that's a really, it's been an interesting experience to observe, and they're doing great work. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Kaiser, Human Rights and Equity Advisory Committee. Oh.
So I did receive an email from Superintendent Colette Ruddick, and it said that, that the Equity Committee that included SEAC representation had folded last fall, and that the committee has since formed in its place the committee has since formed in its place. Okay, this sentence doesn't make sense. Anyways, it's to say that the positions are filled.
Okay, doesn't need us.
The community representation is filled, and they will let us know if anything changes.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And Melissa is sent her regrets, so we will wait to hear about the Indigenous Advisory Council. So we're now at item 5.0. Any items for the next agenda or order paper? Just to highlight, next month We will be welcoming nominations for any committee members who'd like to stand for the position of chair or vice chair. That's in line with the turnover that happens in the January term for appointment of trustees, although they're on a 4-year term. If anybody is interested in the position, please feel free to reach out and gain some information on the role. If more than one person wishes to stand for each of the positions, a vote will be held at the next meeting, and they will take over at the following meeting. So are there any other items that people would like to add on to the committee? I just want to clarify, we have deaf and hard of hearing coming next month.
Next month we have the mental
health and woe. Sorry, yes, I think I was absent. Right. So we have the mental health and well-being coming. Yeah. Okay. If there's anything else, yes, Carol.
So I am new, as you know, and I realize that for some committee members who were on the last iteration, it would be repetitive. But now that we've had a presentation on the giftedness identification, I wonder if autism and learning disabilities could be covered as well.
We would be very happy to present, and I'm sure that Autism Ontario, I know that they were hoping to get in front of us too, so we will schedule that. One of us will present something. Thank you. Okay, we are at item 6.0. We have made it through the agenda. At this point in time, as we have completed our agenda, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:47. Can't read a clock. 8:47. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and goodbye.